V and sight views. In the quiet towns of New England during the early 1980s, fear spread as young women vanished without explanation. Behind these disappearances was one man, Michael Bruce Ross. Known later as the Roadside Strangler, Ross would go on to commit a series of brutal murders that shook Connecticut and New York. This is the story of his life, crimes, capture, trial, and eventual execution. Michael Bruce Ross was born on the 26th of July, 1959, in Putnam, Connecticut. To many, he seemed like a bright young man destined for success. But his childhood was marked by dysfunction. His mother suffered from mental health struggles, and his father was emotionally distant. Despite this, Ross excelled in school. He was intelligent, quiet, and appeared normal to those around him. After high school, he attended Cornell University, where he studied economics. Outwardly, he was on a path to success. But inside, dark urges had already begun to take root. Ross's violent tendencies surfaced in his late teens. He began stalking women and fantasizing about domination and control. By the early 1980s, these fantasies turned deadly. Between 1981 and 1984, Ross embarked on a killing spree across Connecticut and New York. He targeted young women, often teenagers, lured them away, sexually assaulted them, and then strangled them. Because many of his attacks happened near rural highways, the press would later call him the Roadside Strangler. Ross admitted to murdering 8 women. Zung Yok Tu, age 25, a Cornell student killed in May 1981. Paula Pereira, age 16, murdered in March 1982 in New York. Tammy Williams, age 17, vanished in 1982. Deborah Taylor, age 23, killed in 1982. Robin Stavinsky, age 19, murdered later that year. Leslie Shelley, age 14, killed in 1983 in Griswold, Connecticut. April Brunace, age 14, murdered days later, also in Griswold. And Wendy Berrybolt, age 17, his final known victim in 1984. Even the youngest of his victims were not spared from his violence. Ross's spree ended in June 1984, after the disappearance of 17-year-old Wendy Berrybolt. Evidence quickly pointed in his direction. When police questioned him, Ross confessed in chilling detail. He described his murders calmly, without hesitation, and without remorse. Authorities were stunned. Ross was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. Ross's trial began in 1986. His defense argued mental illness, pointing to obsessive-compulsive disorder and sexual sadism. But prosecutors highlighted his careful planning and his ability to function normally in society. In 1987, Ross was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders of 4 Connecticut victims: Leslie Shelley, April Brunace, Robin Stavinsky, and Wendy Berrybolt. Though he confessed to additional murders in New York, he was never tried for them. For nearly 2 decades, Ross sat on death row at the Osborne Correctional Institution in Somers, Connecticut. During this time, he gave interviews and wrote letters to those fascinated by his case. Unlike many death row inmates, Ross accepted his sentence. He insisted that he wanted to die. His lawyers continued to file appeals, arguing he was not mentally competent to make such a choice. Experts debated whether his willingness was rooted in remorse, or simply another reflection of his disturbed mind. Ross's case became one of the most controversial death penalty debates in Connecticut history. Opponents argued that executing him, given questions about his mental state, would be an irreversible mistake. Supporters pointed to the horror of his crimes, believing death was the only fitting punishment. Even the families of victims were divided. Some demanded his execution, while others opposed it. On the 13th of May, 2005, Michael Bruce Ross was executed by lethal injection at Osborne Correctional Institution. He became the first person executed in Connecticut since 1960, and the first in all of New England in over 45 years. Witnesses said he appeared calm as he was strapped down. When asked for final words, he offered a quiet apology for the pain he had caused. At 2:25 a.m., he was pronounced dead at the age of 45. Ross's execution reignited debates about capital punishment in America. In Connecticut, it was a turning point. Years later, the state abolished the death penalty entirely. For the victims' families, closure was complicated. 8 young lives had been stolen, and the pain never fully went away. Michael Bruce Ross lived a double life. To the outside world, he was a smart Cornell graduate. In reality, he was a calculated predator whose crimes left lasting scars across New England. His execution may have closed his chapter, but the memory of his victims and the debates his case stirred remain to this day. This has been the story of Michael Bruce Ross, the Roadside Strangler, his troubled beginnings, his horrifying crimes, and the justice that finally caught up with him. The Insight Views. Sharper focus. Deeper insight. Uncovering stories, revealing truths. Turning headlines into understanding.